Now, the government have promised a new fast-track asylum appeals process that they say will curb the powers of judges and speed up deportations for people with no right to be in the UK. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary on your screens now, said the move amid continuing tensions across the UK, of course, about the use of hotel accommodation for migrants. But is it a workable plan, and will it be enough to quell protests, which are, of course, continuing all across Britain today? Olivia Utley joins me now live in the studio, GB News political correspondent. Good afternoon, Olivia.
Good afternoon.
This was briefed or kind of leaked to the Sunday papers this morning. Was it in response to Reform UK's big song and dance announcement coming on Tuesday about mass deportations, detention centres and so on?
Well, ministers claim that this is a plan that's been in the works for a while now, but it doesn't seem completely coincidental that it's come at the same time as this big interview with Nigel Farage, with Reform's explanation of how it plans to bring down immigration. And, of course, I think the Epping protests and the High Court injunction has probably sped up the process a little bit as well. Ministers now say that primary legislation, so a new law essentially, is going to be put forward in the coming weeks. And what that law would do, it is a pretty radical shake-up, but there are many people who are saying it's too little too late. What it would do is simplify the labyrinthine process for asylum seekers to get their appeal heard in a court. At the moment, what happens is if your asylum case is rejected by the Home Office, you can appeal, and there are two steps to that appeal. The first one, where your entire case is heard, is to what's called first-tier tribunal judges. They hear the entire case. Now, a lot of those cases are getting through to the second stage, and at the second stage, it's basically just a sign-off. Those judges are there to just double-check that nothing was done wrong at an earlier case. So this first stage is where it's really, really important. A lot of these asylum cases are getting through, and the Home Office and Yvette Cooper believe that some of those judges are over-interpreting EU law. So they're essentially allowing migrants through for silly reasons, like, you know, they wouldn't like the chicken nuggets over here, and they shouldn't be. They have a family member, you know, a second cousin twice removed who lives in the UK, and they deserve a right to a family life.
By the way, just to add to that group of examples, there was a paedophile, I can't remember where he was from, a paedophile who would be chastised for being a paedophile if he was sent back to his home country. Just ridiculous.
Right, a good example there. So all of these people are getting through. Yvette Cooper, what she wants to do is replace these first-tier tribunal judges, replace one layer of the judiciary, if you like, with adjudicators, so people who are employed by the Home Office. And what she hopes is that these adjudicators would have a bit of a tighter belt, if you like, so they would allow far fewer people through. Now, whether it would work is another question. I think that the main problem that Labour probably face with this is that although they do have a huge working majority, we have seen in the last year that Keir Starmer doesn't seem to be able, for whatever reason, to use that majority. When he tried to push through unpopular welfare changes, he had to make a U-turn at the last minute to avoid a real embarrassment in the House of Commons. And, of course, there are lots of left-wing Labour MPs who believe that asylum seekers have a human right to have their cases heard by judges in the very first instance. They could kick up a real stink here. They could rebel if this legislation reaches the Commons, and that could mean that the proposals are watered down. Even if they were to get through in the exact form that Yvette Cooper is proposing them at the moment, it's still not plain sailing for the government. Yes, it would mean that new cases would be heard more quickly, but, of course, the main problem, as we keep hearing, is the backlog. It takes over 370 days at the moment, 372 days on average, for asylum case to go from first hearing to the point where it's either rejected or accepted. And in that over a year, those migrants are being held in hotels around the UK. There are tens and tens of thousands of them, and there are thousands more coming every few weeks. So, yes, you might sort of widen that bottleneck a little bit, but the bottle is already very, very full.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private internet access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private internet access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
And you mentioned, you alluded to it, it does seem astonishing that a government with such a massive majority and which boasts about it all the time, saying that, you know, they won a massive mandate at the election. It's arguable they didn't. It appears so weak. You've got a massive majority, you've got stonking a number of seats in the House of Commons, and you appear so weak. Can I ask you, Olivia, about a story breaking in The Guardian over the past couple of hours? Ministers will legislate next month to abolish most short prison sentences, and it's being reported as a follow-up in The Times and The Telegraph that the likes of sex offenders, drug dealers will simply walk free from court because there isn't enough space in our prisons.
So it sort of sounds a bit insane when you push it like that, and I'm sure there are lots of viewers who will think this is very dangerous indeed. The logic of it comes from this a commission done by David Gork, actually, who was previously Justice Secretary in a Conservative government, and he says, and there is some truth in this, that over the last sort of 20 years, sentencing inflation has gone up and up and up. So people are being sentenced for lesser and lesser crimes, and prisons just have not been being built at the speed that they need to be built.
Yeah.
So you have this problem of huge overcrowding, which was made worse by the COVID pandemic and lockdown. The courts were completely choked up for 5 years, and now you have a situation where there are just too many prisoners and not enough prisons. Short sentences, Justice Secretaries over the last sort of 20 years have talked about abolishing short sentences, and there is some logic to it in that people who go into prison for less than 12 months are far more likely than people who are given non-custodial sentences to go back into prison. Essentially,
right.
You meet people in prison who get you back in prison, and you end up in this pretty negative cycle. So the idea behind this is you get rid of those short sentences. People instead do sort of community sentences, stay out of prison, and at the same time what the government is doing is planning to make those community sentences a bit tougher. So if you're tagged, have an electronic tag, you wouldn't be able to attend under new proposals football matches or pubs, etc., etc. How exactly this is going to be enforced is another question. Yeah,
that sounds a bit sort of COVID-esque, banning people from venues and things because of their behaviour. I mean, that's another separate conversation. But yeah, I mean, some would argue, I'd argue, you look at Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York, back in the day when he cleaned up New York's crime-ridden sort of landscape by having the broken window theory, I think it was called. You know, deal with the very small minor crimes with tough sentences, and the rest looks after itself. But there we go. Olivia, thank you very much. Appreciate it. gbnews.com/your say. Let us know what you think about that. Should we scrap short prison sentences? I argue, again, just get rid of the 10,000 foreign criminals languishing in our jails. That would free up some space and stop jailing people like Lucy Connolly for tweets. Right, going back to the migration situation, let's speak with the Director of Migration Watch UK, Alp Mehmet. Alp, we're talking about Labour's new mooted plan to speed up asylum appeals. What's your take on what they want to do, getting rid of judges and having an independent, quote-unquote, adjudication panel?
Apart from the fact that they're not really proper judges anyway, that aside, look, it's August and this is more hot air that is actually more designed to get us talking about it and give the impression of government action than actually having any useful ultimate impact. It won't. What they're suggesting really is get people through the system quickly. But then what? What happens? Who has responsibility for housing them once as I'm sure will happen, just as many are going to be granted asylum or effectively being told, yes, you have a claim, as are being granted asylum now. That is simply going to add pressure on local authorities, how to house them, and in failing, as it will do, I'm afraid that all it will do is add luster to the package that the traffickers are offering. This is all absolute cynical nonsense, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, to be honest. I'm really bored of this all these little debates and conversations about what we should do with asylum seekers and small boat migrants. Should they be allowed out? Where should we house them and detain them? How much access should they have to the community? All this and that, all these little policies popping up here and there. I think it's a complete waste of time. You're talking about the symptom of a problem when, in actual fact, the energy and focus of a government, I argue, should be dealing with, they would say they are, but dealing with properly this problem itself, which is the small boat crossings. Don't deal with what to do with these people when they're here. Stop them arriving in the first place. And I want to ask you, Alp, do you think this sort of plan that was briefed to the Sunday papers today from Labour, from the government, do you think it's in response to Reform UK's big announcement on Tuesday, where they're going to announce a mass deportation plan, detention centres, potentially shipping migrants, asylum seekers off to the likes of Ascension Island, no right to appeal? Do you think this is a direct response to that?
Well, of course it is. I mean, no Sherlock, as I often say with government proposals. All this is really designed, as I say, to get us talking about it. What Farage is proposing, now that is actually more serious. It's a more serious plan in order to deter, in order to actually move the problem out of our jurisdiction, send people back to where they came from, send people back to their countries of origin. It's not until we start doing that and we change our laws, we pull out of the Human Rights Convention, the ECHR, it's not until we start doing that we can actually act in a way that will deter people from coming here illegally.
Yeah, Alp, I had a human rights lawyer on my show last night, and he was saying that Farage's plan to be announced on Tuesday is complete nonsense because it breaks the Geneva Convention.
Look, our Parliament is sovereign. If our Parliament, first of all, it's perfectly simple to pull out of the ECHR. We just give 6 months' notice. That's written into the convention. Our laws are our laws, and they can be changed by us. We can do whatever we like if we have a mind to, if we have the political will.
Yeah.
We simply modify our legislation, which impinges on human rights legislation. We get rid of the Human Rights Act. Hey, Magna Carta actually did well for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
We can actually do worse than going back to what our courts and our politicians were expected to do in accordance with Magna Carta. Yeah, all we've done, we've created problems for ourselves. We've created this framework that prevents us from actually acting in a commonsensical way and in the way that the British public wants.
Yeah. On the Geneva Convention, I don't think you can just leave the Geneva Convention, but I think Reform would argue, maybe you'll hear on Tuesday, that you can ignore it under certain circumstances, i.e. that claims are unfounded. If you send people to third-party countries, as I think Nigel Farage possibly wants to do deals with other countries, Iran, Albania and so on, or just ship them off to, as we said, Ascension Island. So I think there are...
Well, Ben, look, Germany is sending people back to Afghanistan. Denmark is turning people back. Italy is turning people back. Where's the Geneva Convention in all that?
Yeah, well, it's down to political will, isn't it, Alp? Because we've seen in
Absolutely.
Slightly different circumstances in the United States, but Joe Biden let 15 million illegals through that southern border and to sort of run riot all across the United States. Nobody knows who they are or where they're from. President Trump comes in, and what happens? Within 3 months, or for the third consecutive month, they've had 0 illegal migrants released into the United States. So it just goes to show, if you've got some political will, if you really want to do it, you can do it. Al, thank you very much.
Soon you'll be over there reporting back and telling us what's going on. Good luck.
I'll be getting my notepad out and writing some tips down for the government from President Trump and passing them on. Fingers crossed. Who knows whether Keir Starmer will listen though, Alp?
He won't.
Yeah, there we go. Alp Mehmet, thank you very much, Director of Migration Watch UK.